How's it going, everybody? We are here at the very end of April. Tomorrow is May, so what better time to check out some of May's best trading setups? And to do that, I want to look at something really specific, something that we talk about here in the Edge Finder a lot. It's got its own little section here, and it's actually seasonality. If you're unfamiliar with seasonality, it's a really interesting metric. Basically, what we're doing is on a monthly or on a weekly basis, we are actually gathering information from the past 10 years of data and averaging all that together to figure out what typically does an asset do on a monthly or even on a weekly basis. So I'm going to explain all of that fully here today, and we're also going to break down a couple assets that look like they could have some potential in the month of May. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So this is our overall seasonality scanner page. This is where you can see all of our assets that we have listed in the Edge Finder, and we're looking at weekly and monthly at the same time. Now, there's a lot that we can do here with this. So I'm just going to start off by checking out the weekly. So at the very top, we see our most bullish weekly asset this week, and it's oil. Historically speaking, over the last 10 years, so we can see data from 2013 all the way to 2024, all of that information averaged together shows that historically, over the last 10 years, oil this week trades up 27%. Next week, it shows a much smaller gap, but still bullish nonetheless, at about 6%. We can also change the time frame. So if you're not interested in 10 years, if that's too long for you, we can take a look at what oil has done in just like the past 3 or 4 years. So I can actually adjust this little bar right here. Let's go to 2020. So this is 2020 to 2024. And we see something very similar. So we know that even recently, just in the past couple of years, this week specifically, oil in the past has been very, very bullish. We can also see the monthly stuff here. So this month, historically speaking, oil is just about break even. I know it says negative, but it's, negative 0.08. That's pretty much break even. Next month, though, historically is a positive month for oil. Let's move that time frame up just a little bit. We'll go 2020 to 2024, and oil even more so bullish, 11.26% next month historically. So some interesting stuff there to see. I want to take a look at some indices, because indices have been pulling back recently. If you're familiar with the S&P500 and the NASDAQ, recently they had a deep pullback and they have come back up a little bit since then. But let's see what they do historically speaking in the month of May. So I'm going to pull up the S&P, and here I'm going to remove all of these assets. I want to look just at the S&P and the NASDAQ. So here we go. On a 10-year average, both historically, the NASDAQ and the S&P this week are kind of break even. NASDAQ a little bit more bullish than the S&P, but that S&P is, that's really just break even. Next week, kind of the same thing, but let's look at the monthly. Monthly definitely has, a lot more information to go through. NASDAQ and S&P this month historically, not huge movement, but bullish nonetheless historically. And next month, we see a gap up. We see almost a 2% increase on average on the NASDAQ and a 1.2% increase on average on the S&P. Let's bump this time frame up a little bit. We'll go 2020 to 2024, get a little bit more recent information, and we see something very similar. So again, this week historically kind of break even. Next week, kind of the same thing. But next month, historically speaking, we see a 2.26% increase in the NASDAQ, and we'll call it about a 2% increase in the S&P 500 as well. So that's something to keep your eye out on. Let's take a look at some dollar pairs too. I want to throw some dollar pairs in here. How about NZDUSD? How about AUDUSD? And let's bump it all the way back down to 10 years so we can get all of the available information. And let's see. So this week, historically for NZDUSD, trades a little bit lower. Aussie dollar, same thing, about break even. Next week, even lower though. So that's interesting. This month, historically for Aussie dollar, up 0.2%, but NZDUSD historically this month is almost down about 0.5%. Next month, though, for both of them, negative months for AUDUSD and NZDUSD. Okay, so this is interesting. So we have two bullish assets next month, historically speaking, and we have two bearish assets. We can break this down into even more detailed charts. So if we go into Seasonality Monthly here, we can see we've already got the S&P 500 pulled up. This is why I love breaking it down first by taking a look at the full list so that we can get all of our information in one place, and then we can go even more detailed. So this is what's so cool about the Seasonality Monthly chart. We can actually see the 10-year and the 5-year average. We don't have the option to change the time frame exactly how you want it, but you do have a 10-year and a 5-year time frame, which is a good section of data. But you can actually see the real performance that it had this year. Our Edgefinder anniversary sale is almost over. If you want 40% off the Edgefinder, the absolute best deal of the year, don't wait and head on over to a1trading.com to chat with one of our representatives live right now. This is the biggest discount of the year, and we have so many new features to share with you, like our Smart Money Indicator that directly compares COT data and retail data against each other, or our brand new data scanners with even more useful information and accurate scoring than ever before. Now is the perfect time to get this powerful trading tool because the 40% discount won't last forever. Celebrate the Edgefinder anniversary by grabbing yourself a copy today on our website, a1trading.com. So, for example, in January, historically over the last 10 years averaged together, it increases about 0.21%. Now, we have to, factor in things like 2020 and COVID year and the crazy economic downfall that we saw during that time. So that makes sense that my number may be skewed a little bit because of that information. 5 years, same thing, but we can see that historically, both of those numbers on the 10-year and 5-year were positive, and we saw that this year as well. We saw a 2.12% increase in the S&P 500 in the month of January. Same thing with February. We can see kind of that same information there. In March, however, over the last 5 years, historically, March has been a really bad month for the S&P 500. April, different. Historically, we see an increase in the month of April, although we know this year that was not the case. So these three kind of followed the trend, although this 5-year average wasn't positive. Everything else was, and that followed that trend. In April, however, historically, over the last 10 and 5 years, it has been positive. That was not the case. However, in May, we see a much bigger jump. And in fact, May, June, July, and August are when we really see just kind of like a bull rally in the indices. We see these numbers get higher and higher, especially in July. And then we won't see that again until later in the year, November and December. That's a big shopping time and end of the year type stuff. So a lot of the times we see rallies in the indice there. So that's the S&P. Let's look at the NASDAQ too. So I'm going to type up NASDAQ. And here we go. So very similar to what we saw with the S&P. Historically speaking, January, February, March, and April are all positive months, and we saw that for the first 3 months of the NASDAQ, but as we know, it pulled back a lot during the month of April, so this month it did not follow suit. The previous 3 months, though, it did. Looking ahead to May, we can see in the 10-year average, we have historically about a 2% increase, but in the 5-year average, we see a 1.27% increase. Let's take a look at what we're looking at, NZDUSD and AUDUSD. Let's see, NZDUSD. Here we go. So this is interesting. Historically, February, March, and April are February, March, April, May, and June historically are negative months for NZDUSD. It moves lower. The New Zealand dollar moves lower against the US dollar, and that's exactly what we saw in February, March, and April. May is supposed to be no different. On the 10-year average, we see a 1% decline. And on the 5-year average, we see a 0.72% decline. So if seasonality is telling you anything, both the 10-year average together and the last 5 years average together show that NZDUSD trades lower in the month of May. Let's check out AUDUSD next. In fact, it's right there. And here we go. This one is a little bit more split. So we do see February and March, same thing. Historically, it trades lower. In February, it did. In March, not so much. It had a 0.29% increase in price. April, though, is split. 10 years, historically, it trades a little bit higher. Over the last 5 years, historically, not so much. This year, it did. It traded 0.44% higher. But in May, both on the 10-year and the 5-year, we see historically a decline in the price of AUDUSD. So there we go. There's a monthly breakdown for you. And we can go even deeper than that. We can check out the weekly. And the reason the weekly is so cool is because it actually includes the daily price chart. So we can see the year-to-date performance of any asset that we want to take a look at. We already have the S&P 500 pulled up. And you'll see here, this left side is the actual price. You can see how price moves day by day on the S&P 500. And just to show you that we're looking at the same thing, I actually have the S&P 500 chart pulled up here in TradingView. So take a look at that. So here's the S&P 500 on a daily chart, and you'll see the crazy uptrend we have. In fact, let's see, here is when first trading day of the year was right here. So we see huge trend upwards, and then more recently a pretty strong pullback, and then since then over the last week or so we've seen it move a little bit higher. And if we go back into the Edge Finder, you'll see that's exactly what we're seeing here. So we can see on a week by week basis, we know that we are in this week because that is where the line ends. We don't have any more data after that. Historically this week, it trades a little bit lower, 0.05%. We don't see that big boom until about mid-May, because this will be the first week of May, second week of May, and then we're into the third and fourth week of May, and then on into June. So historically, these weeks here, these weeks of the year, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th week of the year are big weeks for the S&P 500. Let's take a look at NASDAQ. NASDAQ, same thing, looks very similar to the S&P right now. We had that huge pullback recently, but we're starting to trade a little higher. However, the upcoming weeks, next week and the week after, next week is kind of a break-even week. The week after, historically, and this is a 10-year average, I should mention, 10-year average here. Historically, not a great week, but then after that, we get back into that mid-May, early June rally, that the same that we saw with the S&P 500. I also want to point out, in case you didn't notice, you can see the price changed here as well from when we switched from S&P. So you can see here's our price point. So NASDAQ topped out at 18,485. And then if we switch it to the S&P, you'll see these numbers changed here. And then our next asset we were going to look at was like the NZDUSD. And you'll see, again, so really cool that the Edge Finder is able to do all of this stuff and update like this and give you all of this super accurate, super up-to-date information. It really is so helpful with trading, especially if you've never used something like Seasonality before. It makes it incredibly easy and incredibly user-friendly for you to just kind of pick it up and then implement it in your own trading strategy. So what did we see in the month of May from NZDUSD? We saw it trade lower, and the weekly chart shows just that. In fact, week 20, so in 2 weeks from now, is supposed to be historically a really bad week for NZDUSD. Finish up really quick with AUDUSD. Check this one out as well. And yeah, we see pretty much the same thing. Week after week heading into May, we see historically over the last 10 years, AUDUSD trade lower and lower. And this thing has been kind of in a pretty sharp downtrend ever since the beginning of the year too. So bearish trading setups for NZDUSD and AUDUSD coming in the month of May, they look likely. So there we go. That is a look at seasonality, a look ahead into the month of May for a couple different assets for you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you want the Edge Finder for yourself, today is the very last day of our 40% off discount. If you want the Edge Finder for 40% off, the best discount you're going to be able to get all year, today is the last day to do it. So go check out the Edge Finder and the links down in the description below or on our website, a1trading.com. and use promo code A1YT at checkout for a discount on the Edge Finder. Because again, today is the last day to do so. Did you know we do a live trading show Monday through Friday with guests from all over the world? To get notified when we go live, click the bell button next to the subscribe button or check in at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We have helpful, free content in the description below and on our website, a1trading.com. Thanks for watching today's video, and we'll see you tomorrow.